I'm not even talking about this president. I'm talking about what if. That's why the rules are in place. The rules are in place to prevent a president at one point in time from running amok and having millions of our soldiers strewn around the war. Does anybody remember the Battle of the Somme? 1 million soldiers died over an 18-day period in World War I. Now, that war was authorized and still awful. But can you imagine 1 million soldiers dying without a declaration? And people say, what are you talking about? They're already gone. Nobody's in Venezuela. What we're talking about is taking a country to war. We aren't just talking about Venezuela. We're talking about the power of a president to have 1 million soldiers die in an 18-day war. And people say, we're not talking about that. Then we would declare war. You have to declare war at the beginning. And then people say, well, it's not a war. All it was an arrest warrant. It was just a drug crime. Oh, he was guilty of possessing machine guns. That sounds like that's being made up as humor. In 1934, we passed a law in our country saying you can't own machine guns. It's an American law. Does anybody in their right mind, does any sane individual who can read in our country believe that it applies to the security forces of a foreign dictator or a foreign president, that if their guards have machine guns, they're guilty of breaching a 1934 U.S. law? What kind of world would we live in if we could accuse people around the world and simply go arrest them and send the military to quiet down all of their defense systems so we could arrest them? We had intelligence reports in our country that reported that, per our intelligence, the leader of Saudi Arabia was guilty or involved with killing an American journalist. What if a president decided they wanted to arrest him? Can they do that without congressional vote or permission? What kind of world would that be? Who could be for that? The Constitution empowers the president to defend the country against sudden attacks initiated by any foreign power. The initiation of hostilities by the U.S. that requires deliberation and authorization must be voted upon in Congress. Our founders' intent is not a close call, open to equivocation. Pundits argue that presidents have been ignoring this restriction for decades. That's true, but that's not an argument. That's just an excuse, and a lame one at that. The Constitution is clear. Only Congress can declare war. The power to declare war was too important to be left to the confidence of one man. As Jefferson wrote, in questions of power, then, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. See, the Constitution isn't chains on the people, it's chains on your representatives, so they don't usurp the power, so your representatives don't take you to war without careful deliberation. Our founding fathers were explicit, and yet they still worried that a branch of government might resist the chains of the Constitution. So in pondering how they would enforce these checks and balances, they took to heart Monuscu's maxim that the powers of the executive and the legislature, if they're combined, if there is no difference between the legislature and the executive, if they are combined together, there can be no liberty. Those are strong words. They felt that liberty would be endangered or imperiled if all the power resided in one person. Madison wrote that by dividing the powers, by separating the powers within the Constitution, within the branches of government, that we pit ambition against ambition. The ambitions of a president to usurp power would be pitted against the natural ambitions of the legislature to keep power. The natural allure of power would be checked by each branch, jealously guarding their prerogative of power. Who among the framers would have ever guessed or conceived of a time when Congress would lack any ambition at all? Who would have predicted a time when Congress would be so feckless as to simply and obediently abandon all pretense of responsibility and any semblance of duty so as to cede the war power so completely to the president? It's as if a magical dust of soma has descended through the ventilation systems of the congressional office buildings. Vague faces and permanent smiles and obedient applause indicate the degree that the majority party has lost its grip and become eunuchs in the thrall of presidential domination.